Hi, I'm Marissa Hale, and 3 days ago, my sister told me, in a room full of board members and investors, that I was just a secretary. The next day, I signed a $200 million acquisition deal, not as her assistant, as her competitor. But that part comes later. Let me take you back to the moment she decided I wasn't worth listening to. It was a Tuesday, the kind of morning that smells like expensive espresso and old mistakes. The boardroom at Hale & Company gleamed with polished wood and carefully selected casual artwork, as if trying to soften the steel of its decisions. I'd arrived early, set up the room, checked the packets, made sure Celeste, my half-sister, and the company's CEO had her almond milk cortado, left side of the table. Always. I wasn't scheduled to speak, I never was. But I had something they needed to see. A model I'd worked on during the quiet hours between my real tasks. I'd run the numbers over and over. A logistics automation protocol that would slash delays, reduce cost per unit, and increase profit margins in 3/4. Not that anyone asked, but I'd printed copies anyway. 10 minutes in, Celeste was breezing through a presentation she hadn't made, crediting strategies she didn't write. When she paused, adjusted her blazer, and without looking at me said, "Marissa, can you make sure everyone's water is topped up?" I stood up, smiled, but didn't move. There's a model I think the board should review before finalizing regional expansion plans. Her eyes narrowed. The smile stayed, but her tone chilled. "Marissa," she said, "this isn't one of your little admin notes." "It's not," I said calmly. "It's a complete system realignment for fulfillment ops. If we integrate AI paving..." That's when she laughed. The kind of laugh meant to entertain the room and slice you open at the same time. "She's our executive assistant," she told the board. "Very diligent, loves charts." The room chuckled. Even the ones who'd asked for my input behind closed doors. Even my father, seated at the far end, scrolled through his phone like nothing was happening. Celeste turned back to me, voice sugar-slicked and cruel. "You're here to support, not to suggest." It wasn't the first time, but it was the last time I would swallow it. I nodded. Understood. The meeting carried on. They praised recycled ideas, approved safe budgets, ignored the solutions sitting quietly in my satchel. An hour later, I was walking past the Hale & Company logo in the lobby, for what would turn out to be the last time as someone who worked for that company. By 4 p.m., I was across town, sitting in a conference room at Archer Square Ventures, flipping open my laptop in front of Leah Ramirez, the firm's lead tech investor. "Wasn't expecting to hear from you until Q4, she said. "I wasn't expecting to pitch this early," I replied, but something shifted. She raised an eyebrow. "Pressure or clarity?" "Both," I said, "and a reminder." "A reminder of what?" I clicked the screen, the prototype loaded. "That I was never just a secretary." She leaned back, smiled. "Let's talk valuation." The invitation said, "Family only." I almost didn't go. It was Celeste's birthday, an annual performance held at the Monroe Club downtown. White walls, crystal chandeliers, and just enough candlelight to make Betrayal look romantic. I stood outside for a moment longer than necessary. It was 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes early. I watched two valets joke over something on one of their phones, heads tilted, shoulders relaxed. One of them glanced at me. I nodded. He looked away. Inside, the music was soft jazz, the kind of background noise curated to signal, "We're rich but not trying too hard." I stepped in. The party was already in motion, white roses everywhere. A signature cocktail called the CEO's Spritz, circulating on gold trays. And Celeste, of course, was in the center, wearing red. Not just any red. The "I'm in control of the narrative" red. She greeted donors like old friends, laughed at jokes before they landed, tilted her head just enough to seem approachable, but not enough to invite real conversation. She saw me, didn't break her stride, just offered a nod, like I was the florist dropping in to check the stems. "Marissa!" someone behind me called. It was Talia, head of PR. Her voice was high and bright, like she practiced in elevators. "You made it. I wasn't sure if you got the update." "What update?" "Oh," she smiled, tapping her clutch. "That they shifted you to table 9, closer to the waitstaff door, but great view of the dessert wall." I blinked. I was on table 3. "Right," she whispered with a faux wince. That's now for VIP stakeholders. But hey, proximity to the cake is a win, right? I took my seat. Alone. Between a junior accountant and someone I didn't recognize. At 7:32 p.m., the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room like stage curtains drawing shut. Celeste stepped forward. First, she began, holding her glass like a microphone, thank you all for coming. This year has been transformational, and tonight isn't just about me, it's about family. She gestured to our father, seated beside her, beaming with that proud but vacant expression he wore at most public events. A smile he only put on when he could see a flash from the camera. And speaking of family, she went on, I want to take a moment to recognize someone very special. I sat straighter, not because I thought she meant me, but because I needed to be ready. To the one who's helped keep this company, and this family, polished, prepped, and protected. We couldn't run without her. Truly. A server walked out holding a small cake, a single-tier round with white frosting and what looked like a cartoon clipboard on top. She's the glue that holds the boring parts together. Let's give a round of applause to our Secretary of the Year, Marissa Hale. There was applause, not the warm kind, the this is awkward but we're polite kind. My stomach didn't sink. It clenched, like it had seen this scene before in a bad dream. A server placed the cake in front of me. The frosting read, thanks for taking notes. No punctuation, just humiliation. Celeste didn't look at me. She turned away to accept a velvet box from my father. She opened it. Inside, a vintage Rolex. Gold, minimalist, imported. The kind of gift that says, your time matters more than others. Oh my God, she whispered. Dad, you didn't. I did, he grinned. Because you deserve it. She kissed his cheek. Cameras clicked. I didn't move, didn't clap. I stared at my cake. I could hear a woman behind me whisper, didn't know secretaries got tributes now. Her friend laughed. Maybe she brought the wrong heels and they felt bad. I picked up my fork. Not to eat, just to keep my hands from shaking. And that's when it happened. A twist they didn't see coming. Earlier that week, I had been compiling a training reel for new assistants. Part of my unofficial duties. Part of what they like to call my obsessive documentation style. I'd left my lapel mic active. I'd recorded everything from our prep meetings, including Celeste's rehearsal with PR. And the moment I got that cake, I remembered what she had said on Tuesday. Let's do something fun for Marissa. Make it sweet. You know, ceremonial, like giving a gold star to a teacher's pet. Won't that come off as mocking? Exactly. But she won't notice. She never does. That's the thing about Marissa. She absorbs everything like paper, dry, disposable. I stood, quietly, walked to the side door, grabbed my bag, pulled out the audio recorder, connected it via Bluetooth to the venue's sound system. I'd tested the signal range earlier, just in case. I didn't say a word. I pressed play. The room froze. Celeste's voice flooded the air. Her exact words, word for word. Gasps. A fork clattered to the ground. Someone said, "What the hell?" By the time the clip ended, Celeste was pale. My father's face, blank. I walked back in, picked up my cake, handed it to a passing server. She might still want this, I said. It fits the outfit. And I walked out. It started with a whisper, the kind that doesn't show up in inboxes, but creeps into meetings, late, heavy, and inconvenient. Confidential prototype slides, floating online. That's what a senior dev muttered to his assistant in the elevator of Hale and Company. A sentence that should have meant nothing to me. Except the slides they were whispering about weren't Hale and Company slides. They were mine. Mine. As in, proprietary frameworks I had built for my startup, housed on an encrypted cloud account only 3 people had access to. Mine, as in, the design I'd pitched to Leah Ramirez just 10 days earlier. And now, apparently, it was circulating online. No signature, no trace of where it came from, just early access tech leaks picked up by an industry blog and reposted without context. When I clicked the article link, my stomach coiled. My code, my visual structure, renamed, rebranded, and reattributed to an anonymous Hale and Company internal roadmap. I stared at the headline, Next-Gen Fulfillment AI Model Leaked from Hale's Innovation Lab. My ears rang. I met Leah that evening at a Vietnamese cafe downtown, the kind of place that served broth hotter than most people's patience. I sat across from her, palms open. I didn't leak it, I said. And it wasn't Hale's. She raised a brow. Not skeptical, calculating. They think you did. That's why I'm here instead of canceling dinner. I blinked. They? Cambridge Ventures, Lister Group, they're reading the room. No one wants to invest in a founder who can't secure IP. I clenched my jaw. You know me. She leaned back. I know you better than they do, but they're not looking for truth. They're looking for risk. There was a pause between us, thick, uncomfortable. You need to clean this up, she said finally. Fast. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled every audit log, scraped metadata, cross-checked download histories. 3 accounts had access. Mine, the engineer I hired through Leah's network, and Sophia Liang, my oldest friend and the only person I had trusted to help revise the user journey flow. I called her that morning. Hey Soph, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Can we meet? Of course. Everything okay? I'm not sure yet. We met at a quiet rooftop garden downtown. She brought matcha, I brought receipts. I just need you to look me in the eye, I said, placing the printed file logs between us. And tell me you didn't download the file to a third-party drive on Monday at 11:42 p.m. Her face didn't shift, but her fingers tightened around the cup. I did, she said slowly. But only because I was working on it from my brother's laptop. He needed his for— Soph, I cut her off. I didn't accuse you. I asked you to tell me the truth. She looked down, then back up. Her eyes glistened, not from guilt, from pride scraped raw. I didn't mean for it to leak. That was it. That was her explanation. A slip of the mouse, a shrug of circumstance. I let you into this because you were the one person I thought would never weaponize me. I didn't weaponize you. You handed my blueprint to the people who've spent years ignoring me, and now they're using it to crown Celeste the next tech visionary. Sophia stood. I helped you when no one else did, when you were nothing but a glorified scheduler with dreams too big for your desk. She didn't realize it, but that was her confession. I walked out without another word, but I didn't go home. I went back to Hale and Company straight to the executive floor. Celeste was in the lounge, legs crossed, sipping from a wine glass at 10 a.m. She looked up, smiled. To what do I owe the pleasure? She asked. I held up a USB drive. You stole something that didn't belong to you. Celeste didn't blink. I'm sorry. Is this another one of your personal projects you forgot to copyright? No. This is proof of intellectual property theft, tied to your assistant's IP address and your system timestamp. She stood slowly, her face still unreadable. I don't think you understand how this works, Marissa. You're playing with people who've already written the ending. Then they're going to need a rewrite, I said. What came next wasn't rage, it was precision. I filed a formal cease and desist, not through an email, but through Archer Square's legal team. And within 72 hours, Hale and Company received notice of an internal IP theft investigation, anonymous whistleblower source, data logs attached, and a note. You can erase credit, but you can't erase evidence. You don't realize you're being erased until someone else starts answering in your voice. It was Friday morning. Cold. Clear skies. The kind of weather that made you feel like something sharp was coming. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the last 48 hours working with Leah's legal team, setting digital locks across every inch of the startup's framework, and contacting 3 engineers to run silent audits. Quiet, clean, not for vengeance, for clarity. Then my phone buzzed. Live now. Morning Stream Fireside Tech segment. Guest Celeste Hale. I clicked. She was there, sitting across from a well-known host on a velvet couch, latte in hand, legs crossed like she owned the network. The chyron read, Revolutionizing Fulfillment, Hale and Company unveils AI blueprint. I stared at the screen. The graphic behind her displayed my diagrams, color shifted, font changed, but unmistakable. You know, she was saying, voice smooth, camera trained, our innovation team has been quietly iterating this for over a year. We believe fulfillment tech hasn't caught up with the demand economy. Our model changes that. The host nodded. And this was built fully in-house? Celeste didn't hesitate. Every line of logic, every pixel, our people, our IP. I felt something twist under my ribs. Not just betrayal, displacement. Watching her sit in the house I'd built with furniture I didn't choose. I knew what I had to do, but not from anger, from instinct. I dialed Leah. She just went on national TV and pitched it. There was a pause. She used the visuals? Front and center. Another pause. Then it's time. That afternoon, I walked into the Women in Tech Leadership Forum, the same event I'd been turned down from last year when Hale and Company declined to sponsor my ticket. Leah got me in this time. Not as a guest, as a surprise panelist. It was hosted in the grand ballroom at the Langston, all marble floors and glass doors, and people who smelled like IPOs. The room hummed with soft lighting, and every name tag came with a QR code that linked to a public bio. Mine read, Marissa Hale, vertical bar founder, Solux Systems, redesigning efficiency through silent tech. When the moderator introduced me, there were a few polite claps, nothing special. Then she asked, Marissa, we've heard recent industry buzz around Hale and Co.'s fulfillment model. As someone building in the same space, what's your take on their approach? I glanced at Leah. She didn't blink, just nodded. So I looked at the moderator and said, I think they're right. Fulfillment needs to evolve. But what we need more than innovation is truth about who builds it. The room went quiet. And then I did something Celeste would never see coming. I pulled out the remote, clicked the screen behind me, and played a time-stamped prototype demo video, dated 7 months ago, in my co-working studio. Me, walking through the system, slide by slide. Then came the receipts, cloud backups, audit logs, email metadata, Sophia's Slack history, proving external unauthorized downloads, all published quietly, without names, but unmistakable to the industry. The moderator blinked. So you're saying, I'm not saying anything, I replied. I'm just showing you what I made, before anyone else tried to. People murmured. Phones lit up. I could feel the air change, like the moment before a storm reaches the coastline. And just like that, Solux Systems was no longer a whisper. That night, I got a text from Celeste. You went public? I replied with a single line. You went first. Then came the email from my father. Short, cold. You could have handled this privately. We don't air family matters in public. I stared at it for a long time, then typed, You've always kept me private. Maybe that was the problem. And clicked archive. A day later, Solux's site crashed from traffic. 3 investor calls in one afternoon. A feature request from an overseas logistics firm. 1 invitation to speak at Tech Forward Europe. All because I stopped waiting to be asked to speak and built my own mic instead. There's a moment, right after you pull the pin, where the room stays quiet. That's what it felt like in the week after the Women in Tech Forum, a collective corporate inhale. Hale and Company didn't release a public statement. Celeste stayed offline. My father, as expected, said nothing at all. But in the corners of boardrooms and private Slack channels, I was no longer invisible. I was disruptive. And they hate that more than they hate being wrong. It happened on a Wednesday. Not a symbolic day, not a milestone. Just the kind of day people pick when they don't want attention. I was copied on a calendar invite titled, Hale and Company, Special Board Review, IP Oversight. No agenda, no context. Just location. 31st floor, executive boardroom. Just time, 11 a.m. sharp. I knew what this was. They weren't going to sue. They were going to erase. Leah offered to send legal counsel. I said no. I'll sit through this one myself. Marissa, she said quietly, you understand what this is, right? They're going to ask me to surrender my framework, under the guise of restoring family unity. She nodded. And if you say no? They'll vote to ban me from the company, possibly sue for defamation. A pause. You ready? I looked her in the eye. I'm not here to protect the family name anymore. I'm here to protect what I built. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. Air-conditioned professionalism, designed to keep emotion out and silence in. Celeste sat at the head of the table, tailored blazer, no jewelry, her version of war paint. My father was 2 seats down, flipping a pen in his hand like he didn't realize what it symbolized. There were 11 people present, 8 board members, me, Celeste, and the general counsel. When I entered, no one stood. Celeste motioned for the chair across from her. I didn't sit. Yet. She began, voice sharp, practiced. Marissa, we've called this meeting to address a concerning sequence of events. The unauthorized public display of materials currently under legal review for IP classification. While we understand your passion, let me stop you there, I said calmly. Are you suggesting Hale and Company owns the framework I presented? A board member, Weston, a longtime family friend, leaned in. Miss Hale, there's some ambiguity. You were employed by the company when the early concepts were drafted. No, I cut in. The concepts were developed outside Hale infrastructure, on private accounts, with time-stamped logs and witness verification, and those details were submitted through Archer Square's legal team 3 days ago. Check your inbox. Weston blinked, opened his laptop. Celeste didn't flinch. She folded her hands. Let's say that's true. Let's even say you technically own the model. That doesn't change the optics. This entire feud is reflecting badly on the company. It's hurting valuation. She paused. And that's why we're proposing a resolution. She slid a document across the table. I didn't touch it, she continued. Hale and Company will formally acknowledge your individual contribution in internal records. In exchange, you agree to sign over long-term licensing rights to the framework and cease public reference to proprietary disputes. Translation. Let us claim it quietly. Let us brand it the way we want. Go build something else. My father finally spoke, soft, slow. Marissa, this is a fair offer. You win. You proved your point. But dragging this on will damage both sides. I looked at him. Really looked at him. All these years I thought the pain came from being overlooked. But it didn't. It came from the fact that when I was finally visible, the first thing they wanted was my silence. I sat down, opened my folder, pulled out my version of the agreement. Custom drafted, licensing, declined, joint ownership, declined, royalty clause, removed. Instead, it offered them limited usage rights, under my company's name, renewable annually with attribution, and beneath that, a formal ethics clause, which if breached, would bar them from ever referencing my work again, publicly or privately. I slid it forward. This is my resolution. Celeste narrowed her eyes. You're joking. I'm not. You want access to my work? You get it under my terms, or not at all. She leaned forward. Her voice dropped. You don't get to rewrite our legacy because you got your 15 minutes. No, I said. I get to protect the next girl who won't get hers if we keep pretending legacies matter more than truth. The vote happened in silence. 5 voted in favor of my terms. 3 abstained. 2, Celeste and my father, opposed. Majority ruled. The contract was signed. After the meeting, my father approached me in the hallway. He didn't say much, just, "You could have handled this differently." I looked at him. "You could have seen me a decade ago." The email subject line read, Keynote Confirmation, Tech Forward Europe 2025. I stared at it for 5 full minutes. Not because I was surprised, Leah had hinted at it days earlier, but because seeing it in print felt like a contradiction I hadn't fully earned. Me, Marissa Hale, speaking at a global innovation summit, not as someone's assistant, not as a +1, but as the voice at the mic. I clicked accept. The conference was hosted in Berlin, a city that felt equal parts sharp-edged and soft-lit. Every block smelled like espresso and ambition. Tech Forward was staged inside a converted power station, all steel beams and LED walls and echoing applause. Nothing here was quiet. I landed the night before my talk, checked into the hotel, avoided the speaker dinner, spent an hour sitting on the windowsill of my suite, watching the city blink beneath me. Then I checked the guest list. It wasn't public, but I had access. Celeste? No. Sophia? No. But one name stopped me cold. Helen Arwood, registered as Observer Legacy Partners. My mother. She'd never been involved in Hale and Company. She divorced my father when I was barely out of braces, remarried within the year, and relocated to Scottsdale, trading cold boardrooms for warm golf courses and the kind of peace that didn't include me. We hadn't spoken in almost 7 years. The last thing she ever said to me, face to face, was in a corner of my college library. I'd asked her, not begged, just asked, to co-sign a loan so I could attend a coding boot camp. A stepping stone. She looked at me like I was asking her to co-sign a mistake. You're not wired for risk, Marissa. You're not a builder. You're a support system. And there's nothing wrong with that, unless you keep pretending you're meant for more. Then she left. No hug. No doubt either. Now she was in Berlin, watching. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I stepped onto the tech-forward main stage in a navy suit that didn't try too hard and shoes that didn't hurt. Finally learning you don't have to bleed to be taken seriously. The room was full. Hundreds of faces, cameras, a live stream. My name lit in soft white letters across the back wall. I could feel my heartbeat in my knees, but I didn't flinch. I began. I used to believe power looked like volume, like the loudest person in the room. But sometimes, the most dangerous kind of power is the one that whispers, the voice you silence in yourself before anyone else gets the chance. The crowd held its breath. So did I. I walked them through the architecture of Solux, how it was built not out of vengeance but necessity. I talked about what happens when you spend your entire life being helpful, and then one day, quietly, you choose to be undeniable instead. And then I paused, looked up. Right side, third row, she was there. My mother. Blonde hair pulled into a high twist, neutral blazer, arms crossed, watching, not smiling, not leaving. I ended the talk on the exact line she once used to limit me. You're not a builder, she had said. So I said, maybe I wasn't wired to build someone else's dream, but I rewired myself and built something no one saw coming. The applause hit like wind, but I wasn't shaking anymore. I left the stage. 15 minutes later, someone knocked on the green room door. It wasn't a volunteer. It was her. She stood there like someone arriving late to a party she hadn't been invited to, but expected to be thanked for coming anyway. Can I come in? She asked. I didn't move, didn't answer. She took it as yes. It was a strong talk, she said. You're very polished now. I sat down. That's not feedback, that's deflection. She looked down, then back up. I didn't come here to be the villain. I smiled, not cruel, just tired. You weren't the villain, Mom. You were the beginning of the silence I spent my life trying to speak over. She flinched. I never meant to. I know, I interrupted. That's the thing, you didn't mean to. You just didn't believe in me enough to mean anything else. A long pause. Then she asked, is there any part of you that wants to undo the distance? And this was the moment. Not the kind with fireworks or screaming or tears. The kind where the fork in the road isn't about anger, it's about clarity. I stood, collected my things. There's no distance to undo, I said. We just live on different maps now. She didn't stop me when I walked out, but she didn't look away either. That night, I received over 2,000 messages. LinkedIn blew up. Tech blogs ran headlines. Who is Marissa Hale? The woman who made AI feel human. How silence became her biggest weapon. But none of them knew what the most important part of that day was. It wasn't the stage. It was the fact that I didn't need her to see me anymore. The contract sat in front of me, printed on thick cream stock, letterhead from Titan Edge Capital in the top right. I could smell the ink, or maybe that was just my memory. Across from me sat 3 partners, all quiet, all watching, all ready to sign a deal that would pour $200 million into Solux Systems and put us on the map as the fastest-scaling AI firm in North America. I had read the terms 3 times. I'd negotiated them line by line with Leah. There were no surprises, except one. The door opened. Celeste walked in, not with the confidence of someone crashing a room, but with the calm of someone trying to pretend she still had a seat at the table. She wore black, a little too formal, the kind of outfit people wear when they're about to pretend they're unbothered. No one else flinched, but I felt the air contract. She walked over to me. I know this isn't my place, she said, but I wanted to say something. The partners glanced at each other, unsure if this was a scripted part of the meeting. It wasn't. Celeste looked at me. You won, she said. I know I said a lot of things, implied even worse, but I wasn't wrong about you being dangerous. I just didn't realize you'd learn to aim. Silence. Then she added, I don't need your forgiveness, but I hope you know, I respected you more than I ever admitted. I didn't speak right away. Not out of revenge, out of freedom. Because for the first time in my life, I realized she wasn't blocking me anymore. She was just standing there, small, late, and no longer central to the room. I looked at the partners. I'm ready to sign. I picked up the pen, signed once, initialed twice, then pushed the folder back across the table. Done. After they left, Celeste lingered. She didn't ask to stay. She just didn't leave. You really built all this? She asked quietly. Without us? Not without, I said. Because of. She looked down, laughed once under her breath. I thought we'd always have the upper hand because we had the name. I nodded. You still have the name, but now I have the story. She met my eyes for the first time in months. And that story? It's yours alone now? I paused, then smiled. No, I'm building room for others to write theirs too. That's the difference. She didn't respond. She left, and this time, she didn't look back. That night, I stood in my new office, no longer in someone else's building. The city was glowing outside the window. I pulled out a box I'd kept in a drawer for years. Inside was the mug Celeste once gave me. Best secretary ever. I held it for a second, then dropped it into the trash, right on top of the signed photocopy of her licensing request. In the months that followed, Solux hired 60-plus engineers. Our story went viral on LinkedIn. I was featured on the cover of Fast Company. But none of that compared to the email I received one afternoon from a stranger. I've been an assistant for 7 years. I thought that meant I'd never be more. But your story changed something, not just what I see in you, but what I see in myself. I read it twice, then wrote back, just one line. You're not someone's secretary, you're the signature. Sometimes the loudest kind of success is the kind that doesn't scream. It signs, it builds, it chooses quiet power over loud permission. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's this. You don't have to be chosen to choose yourself. You don't need the spotlight to become undeniable. You just need the courage to stop shrinking in rooms you've already outgrown. So I'll ask you, have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Have you ever handed your ideas to people who never planned to give credit back? If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, or why you almost gave up. And if you didn't like the story, tell me why. I'm listening. If this video touched your heart or reminded you of your own quiet strength, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. We've got more to tell. And maybe it's yours next.